Good morning, I'm Sharyl Attkisson. Welcome to the debut of Full Measure. Donald Trump launched his presidential campaign with tough talk about immigration. Today we examine the challenges of refugees coming to America, and we'll ask Trump if his hard line on illegal immigration extends to legal refugees and asylum seekers fleeing the Mideast and Africa in incredible numbers. But first, how do Americans feel about taking on refugees from Syria? Millions have already fled in desperation under attack from their own government as well as ISIS Islamic extremists. President Obama has decided to accept nearly 200,000 refugees by 2017. A new Full Measure Rasmussen Reports poll released today finds a majority of Americans think we should take fewer. 28% say 200,000 is too many. Another 28% say we should accept no refugees at all. 27% say they're okay with 200,000, and 10% say that's too few. When asked about the impact the refugees would have on America's security, 56% say the refugees would make America more dangerous, 7% say it would make the U.S. safer, 25% say it would have no impact, and 12% were unsure. What you may not know is that many asylum seekers and refugees are already here. We visited one American town grappling with the financial and cultural impact of the unexpected newcomers. These may look like city scenes from Africa or the Mideast, but they're actually in Maine, where families like the Sharyl are coming to seek asylum. Tadi Sharyl was a government official in Burundi, East Africa, which he says is devolving under the post-Arab Spring instability that's causing refugees to flee. But why are some ending up in, of all places, Lewiston, Maine? The Sharyl were pointed here after they arrived in Boston. At the airport, a fellow African noticed they seemed lost.
And approached them and told them the best place now they can go is Lewiston, or Maine.
Ashkan Tibet is also in Lewiston, seeking asylum from Djibouti, East Africa, fleeing an arranged marriage.
I came to Lewiston because I learned that there were many Djiboutians living in Lewiston, and I thought I could get help by them and I can be supported by the community.
Lewiston, Maine is struggling to build a new economy after its once bustling textile mills shut down. Today, it's become a magnet for asylum seekers, catching everyone off guard, including Mayor Robert McDonald.
And I had never heard of asylum. I didn't even know what this was. But I went up to the welfare office, and I was up there, and they were telling me, and they said, oh, we got a whole bunch of people. I think they were from the Congo. They speak beautiful French. I said, really? That's beautiful. I said, because I have jobs. Yeah, send them here. We can't because they're asylum seekers. They can't work.
Unlike refugees who are allowed to work right away, asylum seekers are different. While their applications are processed, federal law prohibits them from getting jobs, and they're not eligible for most aid. That's why they come to Maine. It's one of the few places that does give welfare to asylum seekers. Phil Nadeau is Deputy City Administrator.
You know, a family might be eligible for a voucher to pay for rent, which, you know, on average could be about $500 or $600 a month.
And it's not just rent. They may get help with medicine, food, and utilities, all courtesy of local taxpayers. The immigrants know the benefits as City Hall. Explain how you're getting by, how you're getting along.
The City Hall support me.
Lewiston is now caring for people from at least 30 different countries.
We were told we had to take care of these people out of our pocket. No federal money, no state money. Just because they showed up here, we were responsible for.
Town officials know the more aid they provide, the more immigrants they'll attract. They know because of their first immigration crisis.
We believe that we have record of the first families arriving in February of 2001.
The first wave consisted of refugees from Somalia, East Africa, including Saeed Mohammed.
Middle Israel.
Mohammed and his family were originally placed in Atlanta, but he says they encountered a culture clash, with Somalis worried their kids would imitate bad behavior in poor neighborhoods where refugees settled.
With rags, with pants down, with derogatory languages, rap music. Then they started, no, that's not what we want. Yeah.
So you heard or you felt that the environment in Maine would be more what you were looking for your family?
Yes, and since most of the Somalis have a large families, so they were looking a safe place. They know that it's no, state, and that may not make happy. And also they know that most of the men are white people. That is their major. And
so you compromise, you live with a lot of white people in a snowy, cold state, but you like it.
Yes.
If the Somalis had to adjust, so did many residents of Lewiston, who found Muslim culture brand new. The only previous Muslim visitor most knew of was Muhammad Ali. He won a championship fight in Lewiston back in 1965.
I think a lot of people at that time were surprised that the fight was scheduled to be here in Lewiston.
In 2001, a few Somali refugees became 50. By the end of 2002, there were about 1,000 Somalis in a town of 36,000. They brought their culture to every downtown street. Mayor McDonald says many locals felt the newcomers should adopt American ways.
Leave your culture at the door, okay? Leave your culture at the door.
What does that mean?
That means we have a certain culture here. Don't start mixing ours in with yours, okay? And that goes for Europeans, that goes for Asians, and that goes for anybody else. We have a specific culture here. I've told them that many times. I said, look, you've got to assimilate.
Fueling resentment was the fact that elderly and disabled Americans were on waiting lists for assistance, while the Somalis swallowed up nearly a third of Lewiston's welfare budget. In 2002, then Mayor Larry Raymond wrote a controversial open letter asking the Somalis to stop coming. Please pass the word. Our city is maxed out financially, physically, and emotionally. For that, he got accused of bigotry. McDonald, the current mayor, says the implication still sticks.
We had a person here the other night. She was an immigration attorney. And she pointed out, she said, well, Maine's the whitest state in the union. What exactly does that mean? I said, I know what it means. What you're doing is you're calling us racist. I said, there's nobody down there at the borders telling people to leave. The people, I think if you go down and talk to the Somalis, what you do, you'll see that they feel very welcome here, okay? I have a good relationship with them.
The Maine people are very good people. They welcome the Somalis.
Today, the Mohammeds own a popular ethnic market.
This is a photo of my whole family. We have 8 kids together here.
Mohammed tells us 3 of their children have become a doctor, an accountant, and an engineer. McDonald says the Somalis have become good citizens, but he worries how Lewiston can manage a new flood of asylum seekers.
They're costing us a fortune because they're costing the people of Lewiston, not the state of Maine, not the federal government, but the city of Lewiston is being taxed for that.
Today, there are about 5,000 refugees and asylum seekers in the Lewiston area, 10% of the population consuming 40% of the welfare.
Policymakers have a very difficult job to do. There's not a lot of resources, and they're trying to divide up a progressively smaller pie every single year.
The competition for scarce resources poses a dilemma other U.S. towns are likely to face in greater numbers. There's an endless population of deserving immigrants.
People welcomed us warmly and support us. I feel like I've been here forever, and I feel like I belong to this place.
But taking on these immigrants means difficult choices.
Is the state better off because of this diversity that's happened?
No, I'm not going to say it is, because, as far as I'm concerned, I don't care if you're black, white, yellow, or what we want is people that are going to help us move forward.
After months of debate, a new state law takes effect October 15th that will require Maine taxpayers to share in supporting the cost of asylum seekers by paying cities 70% of their expenses. Europe is the first stop and final destination for many of the Syrian refugees. Full Measure correspondent Scott Thuman takes us to Britain and France, where people who are desperate for a safe haven also pose serious security questions.
It is known by one name, the Jungle, a refugee camp on the outskirts of Calais, France, the last stop before getting to England and the last hope for thousands. It is sadly one of many, from the masses in Hungary to those in Germany, Austria to Lebanon, each border hosting its own crisis, a crush of people that can't be controlled and yet won't be stopped. Back in Calais, they risk their lives in nightly attempts to leave. Here we witness a group make the 2-hour trek, hoping to sneak aboard a train headed for Great Britain. Every morning, a slightly smaller group returns. A few, it seems, have made it across.
You said you know people who've done that, who've gotten away?
Yeah, some of our friends, yeah, they have.
Yeah. All the way to the UK?
Yeah. Scotland, London, Manchester, United, Liverpool, all of them, they are there.
More often than not, it seems they are caught, despite what would almost literally seem a needle in a haystack challenge for police, who on this day we watch find 2 women stowed away in a semi-truck.
How long were you in the truck?
10 hours.
Across the region, nations' walls go up. The added fencing, barbed wire, and constant police presence are needed because many say there's just no way of knowing who is among these camps, a sort of quality control.
You don't want anyone to come through who is coming into this country because they are part of a terror gang, and we cannot be blind to the fact that threat exists. We know there are people who are working with ISIL in the Middle East, who want to plan and are actively seeking to plan, terror attacks on the UK and other Western countries.
And there is another factor here.
Refugees tell me that they escape the so-called jungle successfully every single day, whether it's by getting through the barbed wire and onto trucks or ferries, or something even more extreme.
Traffickers. Nathan Johnston is a volunteer medic here.
And you hear much about the smugglers?
Not really, they're very guarded because obviously the smugglers have a lot to lose and they're quite powerful people.
That is an international criminal group of people that has to be cracked down on as well, and that is another very important part of our response.
Because they're not just going to bring across a refugee who has money, they will also bring across people who would come here perhaps to do harm.
Well, I think they're people without scruple.
A daunting effect that halts the asylum process for refugees like Ali Ibrahim. Ali claims he was a sniper in the Syrian army, but rather than keep killing, he quit. So he was tortured by Assad's men, he says, and made sure he couldn't shoot again for either side.
See the bone?
So they beat him with a hammer?
Something like that, yes. That's him what you said, yes, with a hammer.
The stories are countless.
I'm being honest, everyone's sacrifice. Everyone's same. But you have children as well. You have women bring it. And same, you have people diabetic. Like people is cooking in dirty water, plenty of bacteria, no hygiene.
Few say there is hard evidence that terrorists are getting past police and onto British-bound trains or stowing away in semis, but there's truly no way of knowing who is. One ISIL claim, 4,000 jihadists have snuck through. A Lebanese government official suggests 1 in 50 are operatives.
There's a lot of people coming every day. I don't know where I come from. You don't know me who I am. That's the problem.
It's not really black and white on that. One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. I've treated lots of different people here and with lots of different political views.
As varied as they might be, they do have one common thread: desperation and the yearning to do whatever it takes to find a new home. Not willing to accept that the many nations now deciding their fate are at a crossroads, and the wait an unbearable one.
Scott Thuman's here now. How concerned are Europeans with the possibility that ISIS could be infiltrating the refugees?
Well, that's a real and present danger. There's no arguing that. But it's not just about the now. It's about the eventual. And experts I talked to are very concerned that there is a brewing, arguably larger risk that'll show itself in years to come here in the United States unless we tackle it today. And that will be the subject of our report next week here on Full Measure.
Scott, thanks. This week, the Senate blocked a bill aimed at cracking down on America's nearly 300 sanctuary cities. Laws in these cities help shield illegal immigrants from deportation even after they've committed felonies. The proposal was motivated by the death of Kate Steinle. In July, she was fatally shot by an illegal immigrant who'd been deported 5 times and convicted of 7 felonies. We found the problem of the U.S. as a sanctuary for crime is much larger and often understated by politicians and advocates with special interests at stake.
He had been bound up with like 13 ropes from here to here, through his back belt loop, through his hands and his feet like an animal.
Laura Wilkerson is recounting the final hours of her son Josh. He'd given a ride home to Ermilo Morales, a high school classmate and illegal immigrant with an arrest record.
He hit him so hard in the stomach that it made his spleen go into the spine and it sliced it in two. Then he tortured him by strangling him, then he put him in a field and he set his body on fire.
Josh is among thousands of victims of undocumented foreigners who committed crimes on U.S. soil and then, through policy failures, loopholes, or mistakes, were set free to carry out more crimes.
Do you think that the problem of illegal immigrants who commit crimes in this country is bigger than some people know?
I think that it is greater than what we think.
Senator Chuck Grassley began investigating after cases like Emmanuel Jesus Rangel Hernandez. In 2013, he was mistakenly granted amnesty under President Obama's executive action. His gang membership and previous drug arrests should have excluded him. In February, Rangel Hernandez was charged with killing 4 people in a North Carolina murder spree. One of the victims, a former contestant on America's Next Top Model.
You've got an administration that thinks more highly of their interest in protecting undocumented workers than there is enforcing the law, and in the process of making that decision, violating their constitutional oath to faithfully execute the laws of this country.
We spoke to families of 5 victims who told us politics and political correctness have forced their personal tragedies into the shadows while shielding the criminals.
Especially in San Francisco, they become a protected class. Whatever they do, they get away with.
Don Rosenberg's son, Drew, was on his way home from law school in San Francisco when he was run over and killed by an illegal immigrant. Roberto Gallo had been caught 5 months earlier driving the wrong way down a street with no license or insurance. He kept driving unlicensed until the day he killed Drew. It was less than 3 miles from where an illegal immigrant allegedly shot Kate Steinle in July. Drew's case, 5 years before, wasn't featured on national news.
Do you all feel, after what happened to your loved ones, that there's, in some instances, almost a blackout in the media and elsewhere discussing this issue of illegal immigrants?
I don't feel it. It is.
We know it. We know it.
Sabina Durden's only child, Dominic, was a 911 dispatcher. He was driving his motorcycle to work in 2012 when he was hit by an illegal immigrant with a long rap sheet.
He had a prior felony conviction, then he had a DUI. And he got put on probation with a DUI, even though he had no license, no insurance, and no registration. So then he had another DUI while he was on probation for the first DUI.
2 months later, he was still driving without a license when he killed Dominic.
Have people looked at you as if you're some sort of prejudiced person because of speaking out on behalf of your loss?
I've been called racist. Then I show them the picture of Dominic. Dominic was half black. What else you got? Can't call me a racist. Then they come with the anti-immigration, and then I share with them that I became a citizen. I immigrated here.
It's not easy to find how often illegal immigrants commit serious crimes in the U.S. The federal government doesn't publicize the numbers. Senator Grassley demanded them from Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE.
what he got was astonishing. In 2013 and 2014 alone, ICE set loose more than 66,000 illegal immigrant criminals who had over 166,000 convictions, 30,000 for drunk or drugged driving, 414 kidnappings, 11,000 rapes or other types of assaults, and 395 homicides. Already, thousands of those criminals have been convicted of new crimes in the U.S., including felonies and gang offenses since their release. Mesa, Arizona police officer Brandon Mendoza witnessed the revolving door firsthand.
It would be very disheartening for him to feel that the guy I just stopped tonight was a guy I stopped 2 months ago. Mom, he's back.
Criminals like Raul Silva Corona, who lived illegally in the U.S. for 20 years while committing crimes like burglary, assault, and leaving the scene of an accident.
911, what is your emergency?
Yeah, there's a guy going southbound on the northbound lane on the 51. He's going 80, 90 miles an hour.
On Mother's Day last year, Silva Corona got drunk and high on meth, drove 31 miles the wrong way on freeways, and ran head-on into Officer Mendoza's car, killing them both.
I was furious, and especially when I found out that he had committed crimes previously and had been allowed to stay in our country and had not been punished for anything that he had done.
By ICE's count, illegal immigrants convicted of crimes then released went on to commit 121 more homicides in the U.S. between 2010 and 2014.
My nephew was number 122.
Mike Ronnebeck's 21-year-old nephew Grant was clerking on the graveyard shift at a Mesa, Arizona convenience store in January when he was attacked, allegedly by an illegal immigrant with an arrest record. That record included burglary, sexual assault, and kidnapping, charges he pled down to felony burglary and probation.
The crime that this illegal alien committed was to burglarize a woman in her house, holding her hostage for a week, naked, threatening her. Day 792 of this man waiting for his bond hearing or his deportation hearing, he killed my nephew, Grant. The man shot him point blank in the face, killing him.
When we come back, we'll hear from the head of ICE and an ICE agent who details the frustrations of his job.
We have to sit back and watch people die. That's not an exaggeration.
For tens of thousands of illegal immigrants, the U.S. has become a sanctuary for crime. A spokesman from Immigration and Customs Enforcement told us it is focused on smart, effective enforcement that prioritizes the removal of criminal aliens. But Congress has repeatedly asked ICE to explain why then so many dangerous criminals are set free.
I cannot deport any individual without an order from the court, either an immigration court or a federal court.
Right, and if you sought that order, you could deport thousands of these individuals, and you're not trying to do it.
At a hearing in April, Congressman Lamar Smith grilled ICE Director Sarah Saldana.
You know, the criminal justice system releases murderers, rapists, sexual assaulters every day when a federal judge decides, you know, this person does not present a flight risk or a safe danger to the community. That's the same considerations the law and the regulations.
The law allows you to deport these individuals if you want to.
Senator Grassley says he's heard from one whistleblower after another inside ICE claiming they're told not to do their job.
Ignore the laws. Just do everything you can to have people that ought to be deported to be able to stay in this country.
So it's not, in their view, always an accident that people who have committed crimes are allowed to stay.
The people that have to make that decision are told to make that decision. When they get the orders from the top and they don't do it, they're going to lose their job.
We spoke to an ICE agent who told us the same thing. He asked not to be identified for fear of losing his job.
We have to sit back and watch people die. That's not an exaggeration. We have people dying in the jail. That happens every day. That's the most horrific thing, is to know that you have the ability to prevent this. And the government would rather not offend anybody than keep people from dying.
I know that this country welcomes immigrants. This country was built by immigrants, but we're also a country of laws. And when we have people that cross our borders that don't have the same respect for our laws that we do. It bothers me, and it bothers me that we can't hold them accountable.
This administration, in too many cases, has turned a blind eye to enforcement.
Don Rosenberg attended a congressional hearing in July, convened after Kate Steinle's death. He lashed out when an advocate said illegal immigrants should not be judged by a few bad apples.
Thousands of people, not a few.
45 House Republicans have co-sponsored Kate's law to mandate 5 years in prison for any undocumented alien who returns to the U.S. after being deported. But the bill has stalled.
We're just collateral damage in their attempt to garner votes on the left and donations, financial donations on the right. It's just crazy.
Yeah. Greg Chen is an advocate for illegal immigrants with the American Immigration Lawyers Association, or AILA.
What AILA cautions is that lawmakers not jump to the conclusion of trying to punish the immigrant community and scapegoat them.
He referred us to a study showing most immigrants are law-abiding.
There's no indication that immigrants are any more likely to commit a crime than anybody else.
Isn't it true that the study doesn't break out the illegal immigrant population specifically? So we may assume that they don't commit crimes at a higher rate, but we don't really know.
You're right, it doesn't break out that particular population of unauthorized versus those who are here legally.
In the end, Chen says the best way to track those who are dangerous is to allow all illegal immigrants in the U.S. to become documented.
It's both good for America in terms of national security and public safety, but benefits the economy, as well as immigrant families and businesses.
The families of the victims say they're weary of being treated as if their rights and interests take a back seat to those who wouldn't be here if laws were enforced.
The leniencies that our government is showing these illegal criminals is costing innocent Americans their lives.
For me, it's being a mom who lost her only child and my best friend. It's about right and wrong. Has nothing to do with race. Has nothing to do where you come from. Mexico, Germany, Canada, I don't care where you come from. You gotta do it the right way. Because we're losing too many kids. We're losing too many family members. And nobody talks about it.
Some of the illegal immigrants in our report were finally deported. ICE told us it's working to focus efforts on criminals who threaten the public. That includes a new priority enforcement program intended to make sure ICE takes custody of dangerous criminals so they're not released back into the U.S.